was sitting, I can see your belly. And that was right over there at the back of the room. These people down here, you know.
Sorry, I'm waiting for the punchline. Go on. No, seriously, go on.
Okay.
No, go on. You can see my belly, and we can all see you dying right now. Let's go for it. Here we go.
For whatever it's worth, I like your belly, so. But I would pay to see Sir Patrick Stewart dying on stage any day, so.
You know that feeling when someone who's been fake nice to your face for years finally gets exposed. Now multiply that by 1,000,000, add in forced laughs, cringy sing-alongs, and a heavy dose of Hollywood privilege, and you get the public unraveling of James Corden, of whispers, quiet stories, and side-eye of whispers, quiet stories, and side-eye from people behind the scenes. For a long time, folks were saying the same thing. The friendly, goofy persona didn't match what was happening off camera. And eventually, all of that talk started catching up to him. James Corden didn't just stumble a little. He let his own ego take over, slid down fast, and seemed to point fingers everywhere except inward. And to really get why so many people felt like this was karma doing its thing, you have to rewind to when he was actually well-liked. It sounds wild now, but there was a time when audiences genuinely rooted for him. Back in 2007, he co-created Gavin and Stacey with Ruth Jones. The show blew up in the UK. It was funny, warm, and felt real. Corden played Smithy, loud, childish, kind of irritating, but somehow still lovable. Viewers connected with it instantly. Almost overnight, he went from a struggling actor to a household name. That was his golden window. If you had stayed in the driver's seat.
Has been weird this week though, hasn't it? Watching Harvey Weinstein in hot water. Ask any of the women who watched him take a bath. It's weird watching Harvey Weinstein in hot water. Harvey Weinstein wanted to come tonight, but he'll settle for whatever potted plant is closest.
His story might have looked very different, but according to people who worked around him, that humility didn't stick around for long. The success from Gavin and Stacey hit fast, and some say it hit hard. Co-stars later hinted that his attitude changed almost overnight. Rob Brydon, yes, that Rob Brydon, reportedly pulled him aside and told him to take it down a notch. Even James's own sisters warned him not to let fame turn him into that guy. When your own family is checking your ego before you've even reached your peak, that's not random. That's a warning sign. Instead of slowing down, James seemed to lean further into the spotlight. He tried to turn his TV success into sketch shows and film roles, but most of those projects didn't land the way he hoped. Horn and Corden was panned by critics. Lesbian vampire killers quickly became the kind of title people joked about rather than celebrated. Reviews weren't just negative, they were harsh. Instead of stepping back and recalibrating, he reportedly went into defense mode. Criticism felt personal, failures were blamed on outside factors. That pattern, according to many observers, followed him for years. Then came a moment that could have shifted everything. At the 2010 Glamour Awards, Sir Patrick Stewart publicly called him out on stage for seeming disengaged and unprofessional. This wasn't an online commenter hiding behind a screen. This was a respected acting legend calmly addressing what he saw. Rather than taking it as constructive feedback, James responded with sharp humor and pushed back in front of the crowd. It didn't end his career, but it showed something important. Handling criticism gracefully didn't seem to come naturally to him. Fast forward to 2014, and CBS made a bold choice. They handed The Late Late Show to James Corden after Craig Ferguson stepped away. Many viewers in the US barely knew who he was. Expectations were modest.
It's just there. Okay, can we get a taxi ready, please? The old man going home. Decided to sign for one more year on the show and that this will be this.
But then came the segment that changed everything. Carpool karaoke, and it worked. Watching major stars sing in a car felt fresh and fun at first. Adele, Paul McCartney, Lady Gaga. The clips exploded online. Billions of views. Suddenly, James Corden was everywhere. Award shows, movie cameos, Broadway appearances, voice roles, hosting gigs. The friendly, cheerful British persona connected with American audiences. He felt safe, upbeat, and easy to watch. For a while, the momentum was unstoppable. On screen, he felt fun, safe, the perfect late-night host for a polished, advertiser-friendly era. But while viewers saw a cheerful goofball, some people behind the scenes described something very different. Crew members started sharing quiet stories. Writers began whispering. Staff noticed patterns, like how he treated people who didn't have status, how his tone shifted when cameras shut off, and how fast his mood changed when things didn't go his way. Then came a moment that cracked the illusion for a lot of viewers. During a game on Jimmy Kimmel Live, James was asked to name 2 of his camera operators. These were people he worked with every day, people who helped make his show run smoothly. He couldn't name one, not a single one. The room went awkwardly quiet. Jimmy tried to keep it light. James froze, and for many watching, that silence spoke volumes. It wasn't really about forgetting names, it was about the perception that the people behind the curtain didn't matter unless they were famous, powerful, or useful. That clip traveled fast, and it planted doubt. From there, the shine started to fade. In 2017, just days after serious allegations involving a major Hollywood producer became public, James made jokes about the situation at a live event.
Here in LA, it's so beautiful. Harvey Weinstein has already asked tonight up to his hotel to give him a massage. I don't know whether that groan was that you like that joke or you don't like that joke. If you don't like that joke, you should probably leave.
The tone didn't land well. The audience response was cold. Online reaction was even colder. Actress Rose McGowan publicly criticized him, echoing what some insiders had been hinting at for years. The words people used weren't flattering. Tone deaf, self-focused, out of touch. Then came the Reddit AMA. If you want a case study in how public perception can shift in real time, that thread is it. Instead of playful questions, the comments filled up with detailed stories. Waiters, crew members, assistants, writers, regular people. Many described similar experiences. They used words like entitled, dismissive, rude, and unaware of how his behavior came across. One comment described him as a massively entitled nightmare. That phrase stuck. James answered a few safe questions and then disappeared from the thread. But by that point, the damage was done. The conversation had changed. People weren't asking if the rumors were true anymore. They were asking how this image had lasted so long. And here's the thing. It wasn't one giant scandal that turned the tide. It was accumulation, story after story. Once people felt comfortable speaking up, the accounts kept coming. It became harder and harder to brush it off as coincidence. Then there was Cats. You can't talk about this chapter without mentioning it. The 2019 film adaptation became infamous almost instantly. James played Buster Jones, transformed through heavy CGI into a singing cat with unsettlingly human features. The movie was widely mocked. Critics were brutal. Audiences turned it into meme fuel overnight. It wasn't just a box office disappointment. It became a cultural joke. And instead of leaning into the humor or laughing at himself, James seemed to distance himself from it. He later admitted he hadn't even watched the final version of the film.
I'm waiting for the punchline. Go on. No, seriously, go on.
Okay.
No, go on. You can see my belly, and we can all see you dying right now. Let's go for it. Here we go.
2 of the cameramen in this room.
It's a different crew tonight, actually.
For many observers, that felt telling. If you're part of a project that big, that visible, and that talked about, ignoring it doesn't erase it. It just adds to the perception that accountability isn't your strong suit. By this point, the lovable late-night image had cracks all over it. The stories, the awkward moments, the public missteps, the projects that didn't land, it all stacked up. And once that polished persona started slipping, it became much harder to put it back together. That alone didn't end his run, but it reinforced a pattern. He seemed to love the spotlight when everything was going right and stepped back when things went sideways. Then came The Prom. This one hit hard, especially with younger viewers. James, a straight actor, played a flamboyant gay character that many critics felt leaned too heavily on outdated stereotypes. Reviews were sharp. Some LGBTQ+ viewers said the portrayal felt exaggerated in a way that missed the mark. Instead of slowing down and really hearing that feedback, James pushed back. He suggested critics were overreacting and missing the intention. And once again, people noticed something familiar. When criticism showed up, empathy didn't always lead the response. But the moment that truly reshaped his public image didn't happen on a red carpet. It happened in a restaurant in 2022. The owner of Balthazar in New York publicly announced that James Corden had been banned. Not quietly, not behind closed doors, publicly. The owner described him as the most difficult customer his staff had dealt with in decades. According to the account shared, the issue involved a mistake with an omelet order. The owner claimed James reacted in a way that made staff uncomfortable. He later said Corden had been harsh towards servers on more than one occasion. This wasn't framed as a minor misunderstanding. It was presented as a pattern of behavior serious enough for the restaurant to take a stand.
Difficult and obnoxious presenter I've ever worked with is James Corden. I went along to L Street and I sat in the darkness and kind of watched James on the set of League of Their Own rehearse. No audience, no other panel members, just him on his own. And he got he came to a point where he had to read from a card, and he had the card up like that, and he was reading from it. And it was kind of a joke in there. And he kind of just like, I remember, he just looked at it like, that's not funny. That's not funny. What? He was like, that's shit. That's shit. We have to rewrite that. We have to rewrite this. And I don't know, maybe he was having a bad day, I thought, and the writing has just not been up to scratch. But I definitely thought, man, you know, somebody wrote that.
James responded by saying the situation had been exaggerated and that he hadn't raised his voice, only expressed frustration. But by then, the story had already spread everywhere. And once it did, more stories followed. Flight attendants, hotel staff, TV crew members, writers, drivers, different cities, different years, similar descriptions. Some claimed he was dismissive, others said he was quick-tempered behind the scenes. A few directors reportedly described him as one of the more challenging hosts they had worked with. Writers alleged that there were disputes over credit and compensation. Suddenly, the nice guy brand started to wobble, not because of one explosive scandal, but because of consistency. The stories echoed each other, and when people compared notes, they began to see a pattern they hadn't fully processed before. Even the Late Late Show started to feel different. Carpool karaoke didn't hit with the same energy. Guests looked less relaxed. Segments felt more rehearsed than spontaneous. The viral magic that once protected his image wasn't as strong anymore. Without that shield, his personality was front and center. Ratings dipped. Clips didn't travel as far online. And Hollywood's enthusiasm seemed to cool quietly. There were no dramatic headlines about a cancellation, no fiery press conferences, just a gradual pullback. Fewer appearances, less buzz, silence. In April 2023, James announced he was leaving The Late Late Show. He explained it as a personal decision, saying he wanted more time with family and was ready for a new chapter. Publicly, it sounded calm and reflective. But for many observers, the timing felt telling. When public perception shifts and momentum fades, stepping away can look less like a choice and more like a strategic reset. His final episode aired with big names and polished smiles. On the surface, it was celebratory, but underneath, there was a sense of closure. Not dramatic, not explosive, just finished. And perhaps the most interesting detail, CBS didn't rush to replace him. They didn't reboot the format with another host. They didn't attempt to replicate the formula. They simply moved on. Sometimes the loudest statement isn't what's said, it's what isn't. They just ended it. No dramatic relaunch, no big replacement announcement. The slot itself disappeared. In Hollywood, that's a quiet but powerful message. When a network doesn't even try to recreate what you had, it says more than any headline ever could. So why did James Corden's downfall feel so satisfying to so many people? Because it didn't feel random. It didn't feel like a pile-on over one awkward joke. It felt like a long build-up finally reaching its conclusion. For years, there were stories. For years, there were moments that didn't quite add up. And when everything started connecting, it felt less like shock and more like inevitability. We've all met someone like that. The coworker who's overly sweet in public but different behind closed doors. The boss who smiles in meetings and then unloads pressure the second the door shuts. The person who takes credit when things succeed but steps back when things fall apart. That archetype is familiar, and when people see it exposed on a global stage, it hits differently. James Corden didn't lose momentum because people were simply being harsh. Public perception shifted because the image and the stories stopped aligning. Once the polished persona cracked, it became harder to suspend disbelief. And when the mask slips in entertainment, it's almost impossible to put it back on the same way. This wasn't a dramatic fall with one explosive headline. It was slower, quieter, more about accumulation than a single moment. The warning signs had been there. The awkward interviews, the backstage stories, the defensive responses to criticism, the viral missteps. Piece by piece, the narrative changed. By the time he stepped away from late night, it didn't feel shocking. It felt like a chapter closing. Not chaotic, not explosive, just done. Now the bigger question is this. Was James Corden misunderstood, or did public opinion finally catch up with reality? Was it all exaggerated internet noise, Or was it a pattern that people could no longer ignore? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to know where you stand on this one. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like the video, subscribe for more deep dives into celebrity rises and falls, and share this with someone who remembers when carpool karaoke was everywhere. And I'll see you on the next one.